Somebody once told me there's a book to this movie, and I did not believe what they said. It wasn't until I read online when I was taken by surprise. Now that's one less book to be read. Well, requests start coming and they won't stop flooding. Gotta get going, gotta hit the ground running. Didn't make sense not to do this one. I figured that it might be fun. So much to do, so much to read. Gotta go and rewatch this movie. You never know if you don't go. Now let's get on with the show. This is my books versus films review of Shrek. I'm pretty sure by now that everyone and their mother has already seen Shrek or heard about the titular green ogre himself. But one thing that people don't know about Shrek is that it was based on an unknown children's book written by William Stig. And even though the book had a modest following at best, the movie is so iconic in today's pop culture that the book faded into obscurity in favor of the movie. But despite one medium being popular over another, the book and film are similar to each other in many ways. They both have similar story beats, they both have the same characters, minus a few side characters, but we'll get to that later. And they are both satires of the typical fairy tale formula. And before we get into this little comparison video, I would like to point out that this is all opinion based. So if you disagree with me, that's all fine and good. Just don't be like the rest of the internet.
You know, grab your torch and pitchforks.
So with that being said, let's get ready to rumble! In this corner, released in 2001 by DreamWorks Animation, Shrek! And in this corner, written in 1990 by William Stig, Shrek! With an exclamation point for some reason. Seriously, I just don't get that. So let's start off the first round with the title character, Shrek. If you read the book and watched the movie back to back, you will know that both of these versions are pretty similar to each other. However, the biggest difference between these two mediums is how they develop Shrek as a character. We all know that Shrek is a disgusting being who takes pride in his ugly appearance, but both of these mediums push that concept in two different directions. In the movie version, we see that Shrek takes pleasure in doing gross activities while scaring off an angry mob, but it turns out that he secretly hates being depicted as a scary monster.
People take one look at me and go, "Ah, help, run! A big, stupid, ugly ogre." They judge me before they even know me.
The book version, however, indulges in the fact that he's ugly, sort of similar to how the Addams family would indulge in morbid activities, and that's basically his character throughout the whole entire book. He doesn't change throughout the book, he doesn't learn anything from the journey, and he's happy just the way he is according to this quote here. He faced himself, full of rabid self-esteem, happier than ever to be exactly what he was. Now that I think about it, can you even classify the book version of Shrek to be an ogre? I mean, the book doesn't even specify him as such, and even his parents don't look like ogres as well. So does that mean that Shrek isn't an ogre in this version? Who knows. With all the impossible things he's able to do, I wouldn't be surprised if he was the son of Krypton. While Shrek's personality in the book may be paper thin, both figuratively and literally, the movie's version of Shrek is more fleshed out and three-dimensional. Again, both figuratively and literally. Okay, enough with the puns. Point goes to the movie version.
Movie wins. Fatality.
But what is a main character without the supporting characters to bounce off of? Let's go to round 2, where we take a look at the supporting characters. Throughout both of these versions of the story, there are about 3 recurring characters that show up in each medium. The dragon, the donkey, the princess, and that's about it. The rest of the characters are made exclusively for their own respective mediums, and it would be fitting to briefly discuss about these characters before diving into the recurring ones. In the second page of the book, we get a look at Shrek's parents for the first time as they kicked him out of his home to go find his fortune. The closest thing we see of Shrek's parents in the movie canon is for Shrek the Musical, but I would like to remind you that this is books versus films and not books versus stage productions, so that one doesn't count. We also get a witch who tells Shrek to go save the princess and marry her, but that seems to be her only purpose in the book. If anything, she's more of a vehicle to get the ball rolling in terms of the story. Oddly enough, the book doesn't even have an established villain or anything, unless you count that knight guarding the castle near the book's end, but he's quickly defeated by Shrek's fire-breathing abilities.
That was pointless.
The movie's additional characters consist of Lord Farquaad, who serves to be the movie's villain, and the fairy tale characters that serve to be satirical takes on Disney's better-known characters. The fairy tale characters don't do that much in terms of story, other than to be the driving force to have Shrek go on this perilous journey. And then we get to Lord Farquaad, and as far as villains go, he is the second weakest villain aside from Rumpelstiltskin. Basically, he's the common trope of the villain wanting to be king. That's his only goal throughout the movie, and he stops at nothing until he gets what he wants. After making a deal with Shrek to retrieve the princess in exchange for his land, he doesn't do that much throughout the second act other than...
Perfect.
well... that. Are you sure this movie was intended for children? It isn't until the third act of the movie where he finally becomes a tyrant only to get his comeuppance at the end.
Celebrity marriages, they never last, do they?
All in all, there's nothing else to write home about. I wouldn't say that any of these characters are well developed enough to decide which is better, so I'll leave that up to you to decide. However, I am more interested in seeing how they translate the recurring characters to the big screen. For starters, we get a dragon in the book, who Shrek is able to defeat him off screen through a little bit of exposition. The irascible dragon was preparing to separate Shrek from his noggin, but Shrek got him between the eyes with a putrid blue flame. The dragon fudded over, unconscious for days. Yeah, would have been cool to have that illustration being played out in the book, but nope. All we get is the dragon preparing to do the act, only to have him cut to the next scene where he's knocked out unconsciously. Yeah, pretty weak if you ask me. The dragon in the movie is also an obstacle for Shrek to overcome, but there's one little twist that the movie includes.
You know what else you're a girl dragon. Oh, sure. I mean, of course you're a girl dragon.
And thus it was love at first sight. Or love at first hostage in this case.
Hey, that is unwanted physical contact.
Yeah, if Twitter was a thing in this universe, then Donkey would definitely be tweeting about #MeToo right about now. Speaking of which, we are introduced to Donkey halfway through the end of the book as he becomes Shrek's personal Uber to the castle. The movie version, on the other hand, is more of a companion to Shrek who follows him around after being saved from Lord Farquaad's crew. And remember in the book when Shrek called Donkey a jabbering jackass? Well, he warrants that title by being the annoying comic relief trope seen in many kids' movies. Which is a trope I don't mind seeing as much, just as long as they make the character funny. But this movie doesn't even give him that much funny things to work with. Most of the time he just comes off as being obnoxious for the sake of being obnoxious. And it's a real shame too, because this character can be funny. Heck, even the sequels made him a lot funnier than the first movie. And yes, that includes the fourth movie as well. And considering that that's the weakest movie out of the whole entire franchise, it says a lot about Donkey's character in the first movie. But if there's one character out of all the supporting characters that had the biggest change done, it would have to be the princess herself. While she wasn't given a name in the book, the princess has been described as being as ugly as Shrek, if not uglier. She shows up at the end of the book as the two complement on each other's disgusting looks. And of course, in Disney-like fashion, they immediately get married and live happily ever after. The movie version, however, goes extremely deep into Princess Fiona as a character. She may have a pretty face on the outside, but she appears to be different on the inside. It isn't until later on the movie where we discovered that Princess Fiona may have a very dark secret to her past. And if you've seen any promotional material for the sequel, then this won't come as a spoiler to you. Apparently, she had a curse put on her by a witch, where she turns into an ogre by night. Why was she cursed? What conflict led to the witch cursing her to begin with? Never explained, but hey, at least Shrek found someone who coincidentally looks like him and also has more personality as well. And because of that, she easily brings home a win for the movie side of this category. Point goes to the movie version.
Movie wins. Fatality.
Okay, so I never added this one into the books versus film series, but I'm gonna make an exception for once. Why? Because this is a picture book and the other is a cartoon, so I kind of see it fitting in with this category. This is Best Art Design. Now, comparing these two art styles is like comparing apples to oranges, but I'm gonna give it my best shot anyway. Let's start off with the book version first. As you can see from the book's illustrations, it's pretty much what you expect from any William Stig book. Very simple designs with crudely drawn outlines. It may not be the prettiest picture in the world, but it's unique enough to stand out from the crowd. However, here's my issue with the illustrations. If the book was meant to be a satire of children's books at the time, why can't William Stig make an exception by replicating the art style of what he's satirizing? Now, this is where the movie version has a slighter upper hand over the book. Not only did it capture the art style of a Disney-like fairy tale land, but the animation is as gorgeous as ever. Sure, you can tell that it was made in the early 2000s, but given the technology at the time, this is pretty impressive. However, I see this more as a double-edged sword. I don't know what the animators were instructed to do, but let's just say that they put way too much detail into these character designs, almost to the point where they look like real human beings. Yeah, I know they're supposed to be CGI cartoons, but some of these designs are so realistic, it almost slips into the uncanny valley. It's not like in How to Train Your Dragon, where they find a balance between cartoony designs and detailed textures. This is more like the CGI models from Small Soldiers if you gave them human-like features, which, ironically enough, is also made by DreamWorks Animation. Yeah, didn't know that one, did ya? Though, why do I get the feeling that Small Soldiers is like Toy Story, but a little bit more violent? Huh, well, that explains a lot. This is really a difficult decision to make, but if you had to twist my arm and make me choose, I would definitely go with the movie's visuals overall. Sure, it's kind of off-putting in some areas, especially the human characters, but I much prefer a visual art style that is beautiful over a stylized illustration that was intended to be ugly. Point goes to the movie version.
Movie wins. Fatality.
But who cares what the visuals look like? All we care about is whether or not it tells a good story. So, let's end off this Books vs. Films episode with the final round. To say that DreamWorks took a few liberties from the original book is sort of an understatement at best. The book and the movie are only similar in one specific aspect. Instead of the handsome, good-looking guy who gets the princess at the end, it's a disgusting, vile anti-hero who ends up being with the princess, who is about as disgusting and vile as he is. Other than that, these two are incredibly different from one another. The book is told as a simple story lampooning the works of Dr. Seuss and other children's writers, while the movie is basically DreamWorks' middle finger to Disney. But even though this was meant to be Katzenberg's stress reliever after his departure from Disney, it manages to have a well-paced story structure while also having some heart. Yeah, sure, the whole never judge a book by its cover cliche has been done in other movies, but I feel like this movie does it exceptionally well. The book's story structure is more of your run-of-the-mill children's book. The main character has a motive, lots of stuff are going on in the process for the sake of filler. We finally get back to the plot, and the book ends off on a happy note. Yeah, the story is simple as can be, but I think that's kind of the point of what Stig was going for. It wasn't intended to be a story where it teaches you a moral or have some sort of substance to grab onto. It's just a paint-by-numbers fairy tale with nothing to take away from it. And the fact that DreamWorks can make something so big out of so little is exactly the reason why I prefer the movie over the book. Which means that not only did the movie win this round, but the movie is the clear winner of this books versus films debate. So that was my books versus films review of Shrek. And even though the movie won all 4 categories in this video, I will have to say that I'm glad that I got the chance to read this book. It was very interesting to see the evolution of Shrek from the book to the big screen, and it was also fun comparing the two mediums as a whole. It's just that I prefer the movie over the book overall. I can definitely see this to be a stepping stone for kids to read right after they're done watching the movie. In fact, the copy of the book that I currently own used to be owned by a library that is going out of business. And judging by the stamp cards that came with the book, there were a lot of kids reading the book during the franchise's prime. I heard that earlier drafts were a lot closer to the book and Chris Farley was going to play Shrek, but due to Katzenberg's involvement with the movie and Chris Farley's untimely death, we could have gotten something a lot different. But for what it's worth, we got a good movie nevertheless. Was it a perfect movie? I wouldn't go that far. I prefer the second movie over the first movie, but I still enjoy the first movie till this very day, and I will still enjoy the first movie for many years to come. And that's all I have to say. Anyway guys, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.